Our first speaker today is Greg Freeman with Kwikbond Polymers. He is the co-chair of the TSP2 Local Agency Bridge Preservation Working Group. So please join me in welcoming Greg.
I'll share with you guys here in this room a little bit about what we're up to, what we're doing, and a little bit as far as the ETG and this kind of report out with the survey, local agency outreach survey. So what's our goals? We want to increase preservation of local agency infrastructure. We want to educate these folks. What we're learning is that unless you really understand the value of preservation, you don't really understand how much preservation. And identify a successful preservation model so that we can share what some of the other locals have, found successes and what they're doing as far as obtaining funds and putting preservation programs together, considering them as part of the asset management plan and things like that. I tried to stop Travis from stealing my thunder, but anyway, like he said, over the half of all bridges are almost, and you can see the condition state. This report out came from the long-term bridge program. You guys, anyone can go onto that webpage and pull up this data. It's good information. Look at the condition state. The bridges in particular county. If you look at the trends.
Sorry, just real quick, Greg. Can you guys hear the microphone? No. This presentation better when you click the button.
Okay, so if you look at the trends here, the one thing that shows up for me is the bridges in good condition are dropping off and the bridges in fair condition are increasing. So that's not a good sign. As I mentioned, Travis and I co-chair this working group. We have 40 plus members and it varies month to month how many folks get on the call. We're looking for more participation and more support. And as you'll see, we're trying to refine what our efforts are for as far as how we're reaching out and the kind of tools and things that we can provide and increase enthusiasm to promote preservation to locals. We've got DOT, county and city folks, federal highway, a lot of the LTAPs are very active in supporting our effort. And of course, we've always got industry folks and consultants involved. Some consultants are suggesting they want to get more involved because as this takes off, it's a pretty good opportunity for consultants to help support the efforts of the locals in putting these plans together. The first thing we did is we put an intro together, intro to bridge preservation. We've given 16 so far. We've got 2 new ones from your southeast visit. Well, not necessarily, because we got Iowa and Arkansas. We're able to offer continuing education credits through this partnership, and it's all virtual right now. We've talked about having kind of demo rodeo thing as a sidebar, offering product demos down the road, kind of getting the industry folks from the partnership involved. A lot of the local agencies that have maintenance crews want to learn about the products and how to use them properly, so that might be something that happens down the road too. So the intro, presentation is about a 90-minute presentation. We try to talk a little bit about how preservation might fit into an asset management plan, even though a lot of local agencies don't have time to really think about an asset management plan per se. Looking at how to identify candidates for preservation. Funding is a big issue. We'll talk about that in a second. And what is a bridge preservation program and what would that look like? The other thing that we're trying to get more industry folks, especially from this partnership, involved with is preservation activities. So we do go through part of the presentation where we have 2 to 3 slides talking about various preservation actions. And I know there's a lot of industry folks even in this room that provide materials for some preservation actions. We're looking for some of you folks to get involved, put together 2 or 3 slides overviewing the value of a particular product or technology. We're not promoting any particular brand of product. We're talking about broad technologies that are preservation actions, so we're looking for some support there as well. So another thing we talk about is, this came from the Federal Highway Bridge Preservation Guide. So in accordance with the Federal Highway, what is an asset management plan? And you can read through here. It's a strategic and systematic process of operating and maintaining and improving physical assets, which is hard to do even if you're a state and you've got some decent funds, but if you're a small agency and you don't have people to support your efforts and you don't have funding to support your efforts and you don't understand preservation, it gets to be a lot harder. So economics is a huge factor, and preservation is a big component of long-term value of assets, because the money spent on preservation is worth more in the long term than rehab and replacement. And look at maintenance, preservation, and rehab, and see how that all fits together as a cost to benefit in the long-term value of your maintaining your assets, and keep the bridges in a good state of repair, which is kind of the only thing a lot of folks have to go by. There's really not a lot of objective methods to determine condition, state, and triggers for various preservation actions. And so there's a lot of new technologies out there that we're looking at to consider how to look at triggers for these preservation actions and benefit to cost for various preservation actions, so that anyone can put a preservation plan together. If anyone in this room has had a chance to look at the Federal Highway Bridge Preservation Guide, it's a great tool. This particular slide, looks at maintenance, rehab, and replacement as components of a bridge asset management plan. And so the Bridge Preservation Guide, which is available online, anyone can look at it. It's a great tool. This is a great slide. Travis put this together, but it's a really good kind of nuts and bolts, basics to kind of give somebody that doesn't know anything about bridge preservation an analogy, which would be taking care of your car, changing the oil, rotating your tires, transmission service and things like that. And what happens if you don't do all that? Well, you can, rebuild your engine or whatever. It's just more cost effective. This is a good analogy demonstrating the cost effectiveness of preservation, preemptive things that are going to help, cost effective way make your assets last longer for the least amount of money. And that's what an asset management plan is supposed to do. It's just hard to quantify the value for these preservation actions. We know they're of value, and we know they work. And so how do you teach somebody how to put together a bridge preservation plan when there aren't really clear and concise metrics? And so the states are getting better at it, but the locals don't really understand it at all. We talk about the tsp2.org webpage quite a bit, because there's a lot of good resources on there. And this QR code, we're into QR codes now. And if you scan this with your phone, I don't know if you can do it from that far away, you'll actually be able to pull up this page, which is kind of cool. What's going on, and we talk about all the videos some of you folks have presented, and this video will be downloaded onto this website, but there's a lot of really good information here. And we point to resources for locals because they don't really know where to go always. The Bridge Preservation Pocket Guides are really good tools. And now anyone in this room can pick up their Android or iPhone right now in this given moment and type in Bridge Pocket Guide and pull up these 5 guides and download it onto your phone. The intention of these pocket guides are primarily the main intention is to gauge potential failure mechanisms. What kind of problems and things can happen as far as specifying? We want designers to get involved with this process. This is a good tool for designers. Actually, the installation process, training, tech support, QA/QC, and that might relate to specifications and standards. So there's a lot of folks that can benefit from these pocket guides. From design down to maintenance folks and contractors can use these. And some of them are really kind of a checklist, kind of a thing that you can change the checklist. You can literally go down the checklist. You can print it up in a PDF. You can have your inspector sign it. You can put it in with your job file as well if you'd like. As we're moving forward here, new training opportunities, we're looking for champions within this TSP2 program, state and local folks that want to support these efforts. And then, like I said, the industry folks that want to help put together some of the training slides. We're also looking at just doing training based on various preservation actions. Maybe we'll come in, and we did one in the state of Florida, just presenting 3 different activities, overlays and silane sealers, and I forget what the other one was, but it was a pretty well received presentation. asset management as well. A lot of local agencies, and there's going to be a talk here that Stantec's doing here shortly, looking at how to help local agencies consider an asset management plan, and what kind of tools are available, deck preservation activities, as we talked about earlier, adding to that, and what other things can we do with our efforts as a local agency outreach working group. And if there's any suggestions, we're looking for ways to create more champions out there and educate these folks better and give them more impetus and motivation to understand preservation and fund preservation so they can get more value out of their infrastructure assets. One of the things that we did, it was actually part of the Federal Highway Bridge Preservation Expert Task Group report out on considering funding for local agencies, but the whole thing shifted after we interviewed 500 folks, and this was done, the interview process was done through the TSP2 program, and we literally did get over 500 responses, which is amazing. I was really surprised. The first question was, do you do preservation? And you can see 8% said yes. We later found out that not everybody understands what preservation means, but we're getting people to start thinking more about it. They've responded this way. Are you using federal funds, state funds? How are you funding it? And those kind of things. And you can see the breakdown of funding. That's another thing that's not often understood by the locals is like when money does trickle down, unless it's their own local funds that they've created specifically for taking care of their infrastructure, if it's trickling down from the state or from some other federal mechanism, they don't always understand where it's coming from or not even how to access money that's available often as well. And then we did some follow-up interviews, and not so many, maybe there were 18 or less, and we were looking at targeting a broad range, and there is a very broad range of local agencies. Some have more bridges, less bridges, more money, more ADT, less people. Many don't have bridge engineers at all. Some maybe have one engineer that takes care of all the local agencies' needs. And so we tried to target a range altogether and look at things like funding and if you do preservation and how you do it and those kind of things if you're using your own crews. We were able to come out and extract 3 particular local agencies that had some type of a unique program that was in place: Michigan, Indiana, and California. So I will highlight real quick here what some of these states are doing. Michigan's program is kind of unique. They have set aside funding for local bridges. They have a method in place to prioritize funding specifically for preservation. And one of the biggest hurdles is some of the environmental stuff through the NEPA process seems to be a big struggle for locals to overcome, and it's quite burdensome if you don't have the people in place to go through this long, drawn-out process. So Michigan has done a good job at streamlining that and also complying with state and federal regulations. But if you look at the condition state of Michigan's bridges here, you can see 2,900. These are local bridges. I think it was about half. There's a total of 6,600 plus bridges, and only 925 of those bridges, or 925 of those bridges, are in poor condition. The state of Michigan's done a great job with preservation, funding preservation and understanding the value of preservation, and now there's a process here in place. They've got a substantial budget, $50 million annual budget, 30 million state funded, and then 20 million or so is Fed funding. There's 7 regions, and there's a local bridge advisory board, which I'll kind of share a little bit about that. And then these bridge councils, which they select the projects based on, there's a valuation method that they go through and give values to various projects, and then they look at those projects. Supposedly 30% of those are supposed to be preservation, and I think they're trying to educate these folks a little more what that means. But there's the Bridge Advisory Board, and there's 6 members, county and city folks, and some non-voting members. Then you have these regional bridge councils, so there's 7, I think, regions. And what they do is the local advisory board updates the guidelines for the regional groups, and then they review the plans, and then the regional groups are responsible for creating the plans, and they evaluate the effectiveness of each region's plans as well. So it's a pretty good program. And then the regional councils themselves, they have a rating system in place, and they determine how the funding is split between preservation, replacement, and rehab. And it's a 3-year plan they have to develop, and they oversee that process on a regional basis. I said one of the big hurdles, one of the things that took a lot of time, and folks, is to get through the environmental hurdles, the NEPA process. And so they've really streamlined that process, and it's all compliant with state and federal regulations, and they made it a lot more simple. There's a form that the locals have to fill out, and it makes it a lot easier. So that's a great program. Another thing is we wanted to highlight the Indiana's program, and it's been innovative in a lot of different ways. I say the way they've been most innovative is educating you can see, well, I don't know, I'm not going to count them because I think it's in the next slide. There's a lot of local agencies in the state of Indiana, I think 94 or something. Pat Connor's in the room, he might be poking around here, who heads up the LTAP program at Purdue, has done a really good job in kind of creating champions throughout the state, understanding and knowledge of what preservation is and the value of preservation. And so, like I said, there's some champions. Okay, so 94 local owners, over 13,000 bridges, and over 800 of them are 99 years plus older. And so you can see they're doing a pretty good job of managing their inventory with the little resources that they have. But they have done a good job with legislature, and they have a lot of different funding mechanisms for preservation. You can see only 8 of 92 have a bridge engineer, and only 40 of 92 have any engineer on staff. How do you put a preservation program together? It's tough. Keys to success is really training, collaborating, and flexible funds, and an asset management culture. To access some of these funds, you literally have to put an asset management plan together. So that's really valuable. Yeah, so they have an annual conference. It's a great opportunity for the locals to come out and get trained. There's a lot of vendors and industry folks come and support this effort, and a lot of industry folks get involved in doing training around the state as well. You can see some pictures here. A lot of TSP2 industry members, because they know about this program, they get invited to go out and demonstrate their products. Flexible funding, there's local money, federal money, state money, and grants, and some highway bills that were passed through legislature that got through by educating them as well. So that's funded. And Mel, I saw her where she's going to present. There, she's right there. She has been a real champion. She's presented around the country on her program, and I think she'll be presenting here as well. And so a true champion for preservation. She's done a great job. All right, I'm going to go through this California program really quick. They call it the Bridge Investment Program, and what they've done is they said, okay, locals, you go out and you fund preservation, and what we'll do is we'll give you a credit for the big jobs. And so the locals are, given an opportunity to fund some preservation on their own. It's not that old of the BIC program is not that old, but it's being utilized to some effectiveness. Developed in 2015, preventive maintenance and preservation. The locals are, being asked to fund those projects because it's too hard to fund those little projects with state and federal dollars. What did we learn overall? From our outreach efforts, these are some things that we learned is don't dump all the locals into one group because there's just too many variables when you get down to local agencies as far as assets and the type of, number of bridges and ADT and how many administrative folks they have on staff and things like that. So a lot of them wear multiple hats, do a lot of different things. It's hard to get their attention to talk about preservation sometimes. There are great champions out there that have really taken the lead and made things happen. And there's a lot of opportunities for this group here, this TSP2, these regional working groups and national working groups to participate in supporting these efforts. The other thing that came out of part of the survey process, again, subject matter experts are critical. And that would be like a champion, someone that's taken the time or understands, is a bridge engineer and understands the value of preservation, multiple funding sources, and communication. Start sharing the message around the value of preservation, passion. That comes in with the whole championship thing. Once you understand it, you realize that, well, if I spend more money now on some of this preemptive stuff, I'll get to spend less later. So you really have to be passionate about that to get that message across. Looking at inspection reports for now until we have some better tools and some NDE technology and things like that. Incorporating inspection reports and recommendations of inspectors on what to do and the value of preservation, what kind of activities and things can be done. That's kind of it.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.